Welcome, everyone. My name is Michelle Dowd. I'm the advisor for The Breeze and professor of journalism. Today, we have a special guest, but before I introduce, we have two special guests. Before I introduce our professional writer guest, I'm going to introduce our professional editor-in-chief for the spring semester to just hopefully inspire you to consider joining our program. Sandra.
Hey everyone, my name is Sandra and I'll be the editor-in-chief for The Breeze next semester. I'm super excited because this will be kind of our re-entry back onto campus. So I'm just looking forward to meeting everyone and meeting all the writers and see what we can produce next year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. For any of our guests who are considering just learning a little bit more about journalism, Journalism 30 is a great class. It's called Student Media Practicum, and you'll get a chance to just be part of our team, to work with our equipment, to work with our friend and assistant, Hector Solorzano, and myself in producing content that you are excited about and proud of. So register for Journalism 30 or email me at michelle.dowd@chaffey.edu, and I'm happy to answer your questions. Today, we are so privileged and honored to have John Gorman with us. I will give you a professional bio of his in a moment, but first I just want to say that I consider John a friend. John was so kind as to visit with students that I had at a conference in New Orleans before COVID, back when we used to go to conferences. And he sat down and told them stories about becoming a writer and making a living in the arts and not making a living in arts in no particular order, and inspired the students so much that seriously, those students who were at that conference, there's nothing at the conference that they appreciated more or learned more from than our visit with John. So thank you for doing that, John. We are eternally grateful. And as I said, the students who were there, it's the highlight of their academic career so far. So John Gorman is a writer and a brand strategist who's worked with Fortune 500 companies, emerging technology startups, media outlets, municipalities, and progressive political campaigns like AOC, which he can tell you about, hopefully. His work has appeared at Medium, Entrepreneur, and Insider. And prior to going independent, he spent 7 years as the senior brand copywriter at Dell Technologies. So we are thrilled to have you here, John. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for having me and for the rousing introduction. I am super thrilled that the they're adults. The students at the New Orleans conference felt as though they got a lot out of our chat. So that was super fun to do. And I'm glad you had me do that, as I am also glad to be here. So how this is gonna work is I'm gonna basically give you like a 20 to 30 minute life story that may or may not be interesting. And then after that, we will answer questions and those answers may or may not be helpful. So we will be doing both of those things in that order. If you have questions, please leave them in the chat. And when I'm done sharing my screen, I will take a read and a gander and we'll see what we can do. So the title of this presentation is Stop Trying So Hard. And it's called that because this is by far the greatest lesson I've ever learned in my life, is stop trying so hard. If you've ever heard some of the woo-woo folks out there say, don't chase, attract, it's similar to that, just with 100% less New Age spirituality. So that being said, let's dig into this. What is my life like? Why is it relevant to you? And how can it help you on your path to becoming a writer / journalist / creative professional? So who am I? Wow, that is all of the jobs that I have had since I graduated college. I mean, just look at that. First, I dropped out. Then I was a weatherman. And then I went right into serving because it paid better. And then I got promoted to bartender. And then I finally graduated college, my fourth college that I went to in 4 years. Who else has done that? Probably none of you, and hopefully none of you. It's not easy, and I want you to stay where you're at and with Michelle and with the Breeze for as long as you possibly can. After that, I messed around and catered. I took surveys, and then I became a telemarketer, and I trained people on how to telemarket. And then they were like, hey, you're good at IT, maybe do IT. And I was like, sure. And then I left to become a project manager, and I got bored with that. So I started sports blogging while pretending to be a project manager. And then I got fired from that and became a marketing director. And then I got fired from that and decided, well, I'll busk on the side of the street. And then I was like, well, I guess I can write. So I decided to become a copywriter, moved into brand strategy, took that writing and my music and became a music journalist, an essayist. Those columns got syndicated. Then I got internet famous and became an influencer, extreme air quotes. Then I started speaking in public, and then a political speech writer. And then I went into business for myself. And then I started traveling around the world and blogging about that. And then I started smoking weed and writing about that. And then people were like, hey, come on our panels and our podcasts. And then I started writing policy, and now I run a 6-figure business, essentially as John Gorman Inc. Wow, that's wild. Who has a career like that? Why? Let's flash back to my 30th birthday on October 3rd, 2012. Where was I? I was in the parking lot of a Hampton Inn. Why was I in the parking lot of a Hampton Inn? Because I couldn't afford a hotel room at the Hampton Inn and I had no home. So where was I sleeping? I was sleeping in a rental Jeep that was basically put on my last $200 of credit. And I was like, I'm going to sleep in this Jeep. But I had a job at the time, and it was at Dell, and it was my first ever writing job that paid. That 30th birthday was my first Dell paycheck, by far the most money that had ever been deposited into my bank account at one time, which we would all laugh at that kind of money today, but it was a significant raise from the 30K a year I was making before. So no home, no car, new job, who dis? Who am I? What was I going to become? My life story is a story of 5 websites. Here's the first one, The Love of Sports, Gossip Sports. This story begins in 2007. All right, so here's what happened. So I broke up with one of my exes. And not just like in any sort of fashion, but like literally she tried to chase me down a street in a car, and there was a high-speed chase, and I drove faster. And the only thing I have left from that relationship are 2 things. One, my cat. And the other, my career path. Because that day, I went back to my house, opened up a bottle of whiskey, and I was like, you know what? I could probably write. So I decided to do that. I started a little blog. I'm a blogger. And just wrote about my life. I was heartbroken and lonely, filled with regret and resentment. And why was that? Well, because I dropped out of journalism school. Newhouse, ever heard of it? Syracuse University. Yeah, went there freshman year, couldn't afford it, decided, you know what, this isn't really for me. Kind of hated all the people who were in journalism, a lot of rich money from New York who couldn't get into an Ivy League school. And so I was like, you know what? Screw them, I'll show them. I was a weatherman for 6 months and then I left. And I was like, God, you know, but I always wanted to be a sports broadcaster. But I have a face for radio and a voice for print. So I ended up becoming a sports writer instead. And that's what I decided to do for no money. And what did I do? Well, I wrote like 4 or 5 blog posts a day for like 5 years. A bunch of people started reading it. And they were like, hey, this guy's pretty good. Started meeting some folks. People who are on like ESPN now and Fox Sports, and people who work for Oprah. All true. How did I meet them? Because I blogged about sports and they shared it. People who shared it, Mark Cuban, ever heard of him? I'm just dropping names the whole time. I've got 30 minutes of name dropping and then I'll answer your question. And Mark Cuban was like, hey, this is pretty good. And I was like, I could make a career out of this. But no sports publication would hire me. And that led me to where it leads everyone, when your dreams die. Corporate America. My first paid writing job was as a guy who wrote the types of ads you try and click out of that appear before YouTube videos or as pop-up banner ads on a website that you just want to read the rest of the article. And it paid me like $55K a year to do that. Write things like fall into savings, 50% off all laptops and monitors. Copywriting's not hard, as long as people tell you what to write. And they often did. So what did I do there? Well, I started broke as hell, right? There I was, no money, no career path, no future, no house. But after my first paycheck, I got my car back from the impound. And then I saved up after spending 10 weeks at a Red Roof Inn. It cost $35 a night. I saved up enough money and I got myself an apartment here in the beautiful city of Austin, Texas. And I got that job through pure persistence. Basically, I got told no from 3 other positions at Dell. And then on the 4th one, they were like, you know what? All right, we'll let you have this one. You can't screw up pop-up banner ads that badly. And I spent 7 years at that company, learning and growing, and just learning how to navigate corporate hierarchies, how to manage up and down, how to manage laterally, how to move laterally, how to negotiate salary, how to negotiate opportunity, how to work from 9 to 5 without killing your soul. I learned all of those things. It was, to me, that was real college. I know most people don't go to college in their 30s, but for me, like that was the real teeth cutting for me. That was where I learned how to be a professional, where I learned how to write, where I learned how to have a job, where I learned how to spread my wings. I must have written hundreds of thousands, if not millions of words for them, including all of the conference room names. So if you were ever to walk back onto that campus and be like, why is that conference room named Filker Park? You're welcome. But Dell wasn't enough. No. Every good hustler needs a side hustle, huh? And I decided, well, Medium looks professional. I suppose I'll just write there. They let anybody write at Medium. And unfortunately, they let me. And why did they do that? Well, because I had just gotten over a breakup. And it wasn't just any breakup. It was a high-speed chase. I, again, drove much faster than she did and drove from San Antonio, where she lived, all the way up to Austin. And I was like, got myself a bottle of whiskey and figured, yeah, I could write about this. So the very first thing I wrote was the story I just told you about being in a parking lot, homeless. And it went kind of viral. And I was like, oh man, I should probably continue this, huh? So I started writing about my feelings and about just wild stories that I had. And I just took like everything that I'd ever lived through or thought of or wanted to say and just jotted it all down on a series of blog posts over the course of a year between 2017 and 2018. I must have written about 300 posts. I developed a following. a large one. I have like 53,000 followers. Nobody's counting. And the reason I have that is because after a while, I got really good at writing, just from repetition alone, but also from like knowing what people would relate to, which is just real life. People want to hear stories that they feel like they themselves could live, or stories that are too fantastical that they will never have a window into. People like to have their expectations met, or they like to have them subverted spectacularly. I got that from one of my Medium columns. So, went viral. I was extremely vocal. I had a brash tone that became more measured over time. The rough edges were smoothed out. And what did this do? Well, this introduced me to a lot of people, including Michelle. This introduced me to actors and actresses, politicians, business owners, billionaires, think tank people, media professionals all around the world. They were like, hey, I love your stuff. And I was like, wait, no, I love yours more. The executive producer of Coco is like, hey, I really loved that piece of fiction you made. Mind if I take a look at it? It is still not a movie, but I just wanted to say that because I thought maybe we could take it there. One of the people who found me on Medium, 3 letters. All right, so here's the story behind it. I was in brand new Congress, which was like 3 things I love: brand, new, and Congress. So I was like, shoot, I should be in here. And the first person that they wanted to get to run for office was AOC. And I was like, sounds great. She's got no shot. A bartender in the Bronx. Yeah, I'll write for her. So I slid into her DMs. And she was like, oh yeah, you're really good at that. Let me get you in touch with my creative director. And the next day, we had a conversation. He's like, so John, have you ever written before? And I was like, yeah. If you've ever flown into or out of JFK and saw a sign for Dell, I wrote that. Also, I have a Medium page with like 25,000 followers at the time. And he was like, okay, cool, you're hired. And so I just decided I was going to have her sound like me. And it kind of worked. We don't sound that different because we both kind of feel the same way about things. We're both about the same age and we're both Libras. And so those words ended up appearing in the movie Knock Down the House, which I was at the premiere at. And it was surreal as hell seeing those words on the screen. It's the scene where she's in her living room being like, this is the difference between an organizer and a strategist. She holds up 2 postcards and just talks about how hers is so much better. And I was like, that's it. That's my portfolio in 90 seconds. I don't have to work again. I don't need a website. A couple of lessons I learned from that. We'll get to the real lessons later in the program here, but be your own hope. I don't have a lot of hope. I'm notoriously pessimistic, almost famously so. But I do feel as though like I'm pretty good at what I do and I can make the world suck a little less. And that inspires me. Eulogy over resume. A lot of stuff that I've done is a lot of name dropping and a lot of, I've done this for that and this for that. That's not important. What's important is that you stand for the right things and do the right things. I don't always do that either. It's harder to do those things than to just accomplish a bunch of stuff that I can check off my bucket list. And the last is make a difference, make enemies. I just love that. It's like, you cannot make a difference without making enemies. If you don't have any enemies, you're not doing it right. I know I've alienated 47% of the American population by revealing that I've written for AOC. Maybe 47% of the class. That being said, the other 53% of you are going to feel like that's a pretty cool thing. So to the majority of you, cheers. Finally, I got so good at doing all sorts of non-Dell stuff that I was like, screw it, I don't need a day job anymore. I decided to quit. It was September of 2019. I was making a living traveling the world and speaking at stuff, and giving brand workshops. And I was like, gosh, I could do that forever. I think I'm going to move to Europe. And so in March of 2020, I had a flight booked to go to Lisbon to house hunt. Guess who never went? The world did not cooperate. Somebody decided to get too close to a bat in China. So what do I do instead? Well, this is fun. Half my money I make from writing about cannabis for a cannabis software company. I work in their brand marketing department. You go to the website arroya.io and see a bunch of words. Congrats, I wrote those. I write words for a lot of websites. True to bro form, I also write crypto now. That's weird. Didn't see that coming in my lifetime, but they pay well. And not just in Bitcoin. They pay in real money. I do branding and marketing and thought leadership for them. I also write about climate change. Did work with the Green New Deal. I've done work with a lot of cities around the country rolling out their environmental initiatives, including Los Angeles. And then the other 10%, I write about culture as a freelance journalist. Used to write about sports, but I got canceled by people who work at Barstool. That's okay. When you get canceled by the right side, or the wrong side, as I should say, that means you're in the right, right? Great. Okay, here we go. Lessons learned, right? What did we do in my brief period of time between age 30 and age 39? What did I do in my 30s? Well, one, I decided to stop trying so hard. The best thing I ever did at Dell was not try and be someone who worked at Dell. I was John Gorman the whole time. I put my outside of work into my work, and I brought my inside work outside of my work. And I did it effortlessly, and I did it in a way that was true to myself. Number two, your career is what people ask of you. Most everything that I have done in my life has been just me saying yes to an opportunity that someone has presented to me. I have never, ever, I cannot stress this enough, ever gotten a job by just shooting a resume over the fence and having someone be like, yeah, sounds good, you're hired. I very rarely get asked back for interviews. And the few that I had been on, I was not hired. Every job I've gotten is because someone specifically picked me because they knew me already. Number three, your voice isn't found, it's shaped. People are always like, oh, I'm going to find my voice. No, you're not. You are not going to find your voice. You are going to be your voice, and eventually your voice will find you. I did not start out the way that I sound now. I had to get my heart broken a bunch of times. I had to deal with the stinging pain of adversity. And I also had to get like pretty good at writing. For lead with your weird, I don't think I need to explain this, but the fact that I am giving you a career talk here and telling you this in the way that I'm doing it just goes to once again show that sometimes weird is good. I don't know, I haven't opened the chat yet. I sure hope weird is good. Luck is 90% of success. My God, it's either timing or it's privilege, isn't it? Or just chance. But you can do all the things you need to do in life and never be successful. But if you do none of the things you need to do, luck will not find you. 6, your definition of successful change over time. There was once a time where I thought I wanted to be an anchor on SportsCenter. That's not success for me anymore. In fact, success for me is the less I can work, the better. You will find that once you get into your late 30s, early 40s, you no longer dream. You no longer have a dream job. You have a dream lifestyle. The job is just a means to an end. It's your homework. And last one goes along with it. Life is long, try to enjoy it. Seriously, people always tell you life is short. No, it's not. I've been alive for 14,305 days. That's a long time. You can do a lot in way, way, way less than that amount of time. Your life's work will change over time. It will not be your life's work. But as long as you can enjoy it, that's the only life's work that's really there for you. Okay, that's the end of the presentation because we've got lime green. If you have questions, you can email me right here. You can go to johngorman.co to read more about what I've done with my life. Not that you would want to, but if you were so inclined. Also, do not go to johngorman.com. That is a website that was built in 1997 by a man who I'm sure is dead by now. But if you want a good laugh, you can go to johngorman.com. I did not write that. And that is not me. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And we're going to go into the chat and I will take your questions up until the bell sounds. What do we got? What do we got? What do we got?
So journalists, be brave. And if you want to ask your question out loud, still put it in the chat. And you can even say, I'd like to ask this out loud.
Yes. Nothing is off limits, by the way. I'm a pretty open book. I will tell you if this is beyond the pale. So far, we've got where will the recording live after? Great. Michelle took that at the beginning of the class. It is going to live on Canvas. Do I have that correct?
It does. Yes. Yes.
Okay. On Canvas. All right, there you go.
Can I just ask a
Go,
question?
Jasmine.
Oh no, Sandra, you go. I'll ask after.
You go first.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, thank you so much, John, for your words and your life story. That was lovely. But I do want to ask you. I feel like your life sounds very like just faced with like adversity or just like I don't know. It was just very like different and unconventional almost. So with that comes, of course, you know, it's not always, you know, like a pretty picture, especially like writing independently and being like a freelance, you know, as you are. So how do you ever find yourself running into like brick walls, or is it something that's more like, well, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. So I would call it brick walls, probably not the word I would use. I would say plateau. I find myself plateauing a lot. I found myself plateauing a lot last year. Even the early part of, I would say the early part of this year, where I just sort of felt like, well, is this it? Because we have this tendency to think that like how things are, how they've always been and how they'll always be. And it's only through like deep reflection that you realize, oh, I've only been in this state for like 3 months. And so to kind of go back to that like life is long point, you know, anytime I find myself running into a brick wall or plateauing, but to use the brick wall analogy because it fits better, I always say, sometimes the fastest way through is around. So if you're just in front of a wall and you can't break through it and you can't climb it, walk around to the end of the wall and see what's on the other side. Maybe you don't even want to climb that wall. But sometimes circumventing the path is the fastest way. Sandra, you're up next.
Hi, John. Once again, thank you for speaking with us. I really enjoyed, I don't know, just your like super just candid attitude about everything. I super relate to you in terms of the cynical, skeptical thing. Probably a little too much on the cynical thing sometimes, especially about myself. And I find that sometimes, a lot of times that intersects with sort of imposter syndrome type of thing where I'm just like, you know, I write something and I feel so great about it. And then I like read it the next day and like, oh, this is trash. This is corny. And so how do you find that balance of, you know, challenging yourself while still being able to believe in your work and, you know, putting it, because I mean, sometimes it is going to be corny, but like, how do you balance that?
Yeah, so I have felt imposter syndrome like maybe 2/3 of the time I've been at work, right? If not more than that. And I've often said, like, if you feel like you don't belong in the room you're in, you probably belong in the room you're in, right? Because how else do we become the person we want to be than by doing the things that really scare us, right? Like, I remember the first year I was at Dell, I would go to that office, and I came from a background of like working from home to the extent that like I made any money whatsoever, like, and like hanging out in bars after 2 a.m., like playing guitar and stuff, and like wearing hooded sweatshirts and like Vans jeans, right? Like, just, I wasn't a professional. I didn't own a tie. Thankfully, they never asked me to wear one, but like I showed up there with like the one clean pair of slacks I had and like a rotating cast of like 5 shirts with buttons. And I was just like, yeah, I'm just gonna be here and just steal money until I end up earning my keep here. And you know, I went from feeling like I wasn't enough for that place to feeling like I was too big for a $90 billion corporation. And that was a journey of 7 years. But even during that journey, there were times where I was like in situations where I felt as though I didn't belong or it was above my pay grade. Even today, still now, like I'm honored to be here, but every now and again, I'm like, weird, okay. No, I wouldn't be my first choice to come speak to a class of journalism students. I didn't graduate. I only journal sometimes, right? But I always feel like if you're asked to be somewhere because someone sees something in you that either you don't see in yourself or you do, and you're afraid to brag about it. So that's what I'm doing here, is I'm bragging about it. All right, let's see. Vicky where are you, Vicky?
I'm here. I'm hiding.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
So I have 2 questions for you. One is regarding your sports writing. And I wanted to know specifically what sports you were covering and how did you actually manage that? Because I've been dabbling with some sports writing lately, and it is really hard, especially in a sport like baseball, to keep up on top of everything. I mean, there's just hundreds of games going on all the time. So that's my first question.
This is why I don't write about baseball. There's 162 games a year. Who wants to cover all that, right? No, I'm just kidding. You should absolutely, we need good baseball writers, and baseball writing is intertwined with the American like past, you know? It's like, I don't want to wax too poetic, but I have a great reverence for baseball writers. The way you keep up with it, right, if it's your full-time job, which for you right now, it's not because you're a student. I don't know if you also work, but you are a student. Okay. That's your full-time job for now. But the way you keep up with it is just, I don't want to say like eating up box scores, because that's like a relic from a bygone era, right? But I feel as though like, if you can follow the folks on Twitter who do what you wish to do and engage with them and kind of like click on the links they share and read their source material, you can then spit out some quality content without too much extra effort. It doesn't take very long. I used to write about sports when I didn't have cable and couldn't watch them. I would just read Deadspin, and then I would like read Reddit, and then I would like come up with my own take, right? So that to me was, that was how I did it without, you know, time or access. I didn't get my first press pass until I was like 32. I was old. Anyway, you said you had one more.
I do. So in full disclosure, I actually teach at the college with Michelle. I teach creative writing. And so this next question is about managing competing priorities. I'm as a writer, but I teach full time. And so, you know, I know Michelle can do it because she's amazing, but like I can't seem 11 years in, I can't seem to write the books and do the job. So just wanted to ask you about that.
Oh, that's fair. First step is don't write the book. Just kidding. Write the story. And then when those stories start having common threads, then you have a book, right? Every book is a series of stories. It's a series of vignettes, right? Just like a life. And so when you write that little vignette and you start writing a few of them, if you can just look for ways to tie them together, then you have a book. I know you write. You probably don't write your book because you're like, God, when am I going to find time to write a book? But you do find time to write. So just write those things into a book later. Also, BT dubs. Every literary agent that's ever said no to me has said, I don't want to read the book you've written. I want you to sell me a book and then go write it. So work on the pitch deck. All right, let's see who's next.
That was amazing. Thank you, John. Please answer the question in the chat without her speaking out loud. Thank you. And while you're reading, again, I loved that answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Did you say please answer that? I hope to write about mental health and my experiences. How can I push past the fear of putting it out there? Alex, all right. Guess what? You don't ever push past that fear. You never do. You just put it out there because you know it's good. And you have to. Like, I don't know who said this. I want to take credit for it, but I feel like I've heard it from somewhere and just don't know who originally did it. But someone once said, don't die with the music inside you. So like, if you've got something to say, like, just put it out there publicly. Look, without getting too in the weeds on how sociopaths run the country, but like, you can be pretty terrible and still advance your career. Like, you can view certain things or have certain mental health challenges that you face or adversities that you have to overcome or dark demons you want to vent out there. You can do that and it won't affect you negatively. I know the fear is valid. The fear is real. I'm currently writing a listicle about the 28 drugs I've been prescribed long-term in my life and ranking them. And they include some drugs that are like kind of iffy, but were by prescription. And they're used to tell a dark tale of not substance abuse, but like the fact that I've never gone a day without taking medicine. That's a weird story to write. And there's a lot of mental anguish tied up in that. And eventually I'll publish it. But those fears that you have, valid as they are largely unfounded. We tend to overestimate how much other people care about what else we do. But when it's wrapped in a great story, people will read it and then they'll care. And the people who care will hold you in higher esteem rather than lower. Hopefully that answered your question. All right. Here we go.
Thank you, Alex, for a great question, and John for an amazing answer. We need another courageous soul after that rousing speech to step up and ask a question.
Charlie Parker, by the way. Nice. Quoting Oliver Wendell. That's a duo I never thought I'd see in back-to-back sentences. I'll start going into my stand-up bits if we don't end up getting any questions.
Please ask questions soon.
Yeah, none of you want that. The first joke's about a talking muffin.
Jasmine or Sandra too, you can ask the second question if no one else steps up, of course.
I just have a quick question about kind of, this is something that I was talking to Michelle about before as well, but just like the idea of like having that thread and in your stories and kind of like everything having like an overall theme. Do you feel like you have that? Like, do you feel like you have the theme first, or do you usually typically have the short stories and then you kind of like pile everything into one?
Yeah, no, that's an awesome question. I would like to think of that as a feedback loop. So if you think of it like, oh, I don't have a theme, it's kind of like, the theory of how you change your life, right? Most people are like, oh, mindset is everything, right? Well, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you just have to do the thing you don't want to do. The best, and I'm going to put this in the chat. I'm going to grab a link in the chat for you. This is the shortest, dumbest, most favoritist thing I've ever written or read about self-improvement. That's the title. There's a trick to improving your mood, but you probably don't want to do it, right? And it's a weird parallel to draw. You should definitely read that, by the way. It's a weird parallel to draw between that and what I'm about to tell you, but I'm going to draw it anyway. Sometimes the thread doesn't appear or the theme doesn't appear until after you've written it, a few things. And then that theme or thread reinforces what you write after. And then you just follow that loop until it eventually closes itself. Like for a while, I was writing about anti-self-help. Like it was self-help, but it was for people who hate self-help. That was the tagline, right? And then eventually I was just like, wow, the pandemic hit. And I was like, there's really no self-helping your way out of this. Now I got to write about something else. I was like, well, what else is in my wheelhouse? And I realized I had written quite a bit about how things are very dystopian all the time. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to write about that for a while. And this is, specifically pertaining to like my medium work, but it does influence other things that I write. I did that for a while. Earlier this year, I was like, wow, that's a buzzkill. I'm kind of tired about writing about how terrible everything is all the time. I'm not that unhappy. And so now I just write now I don't really write anything under my own name, but now I write I'm kind of in an in-between phase where I just write what people pay me to write until the next great idea comes. And but there are always themes, right? You take a point of view, you write about it, and then from that, like, it invites you to explore your point of view some more. And you'll find that your point of view or the things you focus on shift over time slowly, just because you keep learning new things and life experiences shift the way you feel about things. So the person you are today I don't know how old you are, you don't have to tell me, but like the person you are 5 years from now is going to be very different from the person you are now. You might think that you'll be similar, you won't be. A lot can happen in a very short amount of time. We all changed a lot. I've changed a lot just in the past decade. I think, a year ago, or I'm sorry, a full decade ago, I'd never been paid to write a word. It was 10 years. I was not a writer. I would have told you I was a musician. Now I'm a writer who doesn't play music. So things change. Hopefully that was helpful.
I'd like to add that John is an incredible musician.
I've been very adequate and serviceable for sure. Yes.
Look him up. You guys look him up. All right.
Sandra, if no one has a serious question, can I just ask some of your favorite fiction works? Tina has her hand raised. Go ahead, Tina.
Hi. So a lot of times I run into where I have this great idea, I get all excited about it.
Tina, can you speak up a little bit? I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of times I come up with ideas where I get super excited about and then let it sit for a couple days or I end up looking at something similar online to see if someone's already done it. And I think, oh, it's the stupidest idea in the world. Have you come across that, and how do you deal with that?
I come across it almost daily. How I deal with it is I just keep coming up with ideas. My drafts folder is a graveyard. It's just like hundreds of like stuff that has maybe a headline or like a paragraph or like in some cases 10,000 words. And I'm just like, yeah, that's probably never going to get published. But I make it a point to not get too attached to my ideas and focus more intently on getting attached to the action itself. So if I find that something has already been written about better than I could write about it, I'm like, well, there's two ways I could approach it. Either I could do a job that only I could do, which everyone has that capability in them. Let's say you wanted to write about, I don't know, a bossa nova band that has a drug problem. And then you're like, well, somewhere this has already been written about and it's won a Peabody. Yeah, well, nobody's written your story about a bossa nova band with a drug problem. I tried to pick something obscure there because that's kind of like what we all do is we think we have obscure ideas and then we Google it and we're like, so I don't know, like that to me is like, it's either you do the work that you want to do and you do it in a way that only you can do it, or you just keep cycling through ideas until you land on something that you don't think is stupid. I would love to hope that was a helpful answer. I have no idea.
Yes, thank you very much.
You betcha.
We'll give one more opportunity before Sandra's question. And that may be the last question. So if you want to put it out there, Jasmine Kuza, I can see you about to ask one.
Uh-oh.
No, okay, so I'm just like here because I just came back from an interview, but like it's not even a question. It's just like you as a person just been through so much. You have so much experience, and like the stuff that comes out of your mouth, it's just like damn, like it's just like we were talking about it, like when you said that like if you're not doing your job right, if you're not doing your job right, if you don't have enemies or something like that, and I'm just like damn, damn, that's like spiritual. Like, I don't even know. Like, you just the stuff that comes out of your mouth. It's like, I would never think of saying that, but it's just like makes me feel good. Like everything's gonna be okay, you know?
Yeah. I'm old, so that's part of it, right? Like I've just seen a lot, right? But
Yeah.
like, because there is a science to it, and I do kind of want to explain this, if only for the fact that I've never tried to explain it before. Everything in life, whether it's, you know, your career, by the way, good luck. Hopefully you nailed your interview. I'm sure you did. But like,
Yeah. It was for
let's not bury the lead here. We're out here shaping our careers. But like everything that we do in our lives it only takes on the meaning that we assign to it. Right? So it's like, how else do you explain like just a bunch of like random occurrences that are, depending on your point of view, either like mathematically predetermined or just random instances of luck or chance, right? Which is most everything. Or, you know, the products of an environment in a given system of power dynamics. But like, so all of those things are true. So like, how do you make meaning out of the meaningless?
How do you do it?
Well, you do it by telling yourself a story. And part of the reason that I got into writing was because life felt meaningless. And I was like, well, if I'm out here writing the words, then they'll have meaning to me, because I will get to decide what it means and how much weight I give to it and how much attention I give to it. So I think when it comes to, I don't know, like spitting life lessons, it's really just about like memorizing your lines. So live the story, then go back and write it, then go back and edit it, and then go back and tell it.
Wow. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Bruh. Did you?
Vicky with the hand raised, what's up?
That's a hand clap, I think.
Oh, that was a hand clap, sorry.
Yes. But if you do have time, John, this is the kind of closing. You want to tell us a little bit about your favorite fiction works?
The ones I've read, oh God, not very many. I'm not a big fiction reader. Okay. Because like most of what I read is like French existentialism. But like
tell us your favorite French existentialism.
I mean, I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation, but it's Sartre or such. Or yeah, Sartre. Fiction, I mean, I have the original Life magazine press of like Ernest Hemingway's Old Man and the Sea. I like that book a lot. I like Hemingway in general. I mean, he's kind of a dick in real life, but like his writing was really good. I didn't meet him. I'm gonna grit my teeth and say The Alchemist. And I'm gritting my teeth because it's just such a like, it's almost like the dude was like, oh, hero's journey. Cool. I'm just gonna boilerplate the whole thing. And then it goes on to sell billions of copies or whatever. It's like saying your favorite band is the Beatles, right? It's like not that interesting to say that. Things Fall Apart is a great book. Americana is a great book. Americana with an H at the end. I don't think I have any other fiction that like, I'd have to go back to like Dr. Seuss and Roald Dahl. And even those two people come now with their own set of problems that nobody really realized 2 decades or 3 decades ago, because we didn't have the internet. I should have said the internet is my favorite work of fiction. Oh man, I really blew that.
You know, John, in a moment here, I'm going to let you close with whatever zinger you want to close with of this recording. So I'm going to give you a moment. You can use that one, restate it. You can come up with something else brilliant. I'm just going to make a quick announcement for those of you who are in the space, but also those who are watching this on recording. Journalism is more than just writing the facts as you perceive them. Journalism has grown into something that also includes perspective. So I love that John has shared with us today his unique perspective. You can make a case for whether or not you think this is journalism, and you can come to Journalism at 30 and tell us all about it. We are so grateful to have John join us, and we'd be so grateful to have any of you who have any questions to stop by the newsroom or email me. So back to John to close us out with amazing words of wisdom.
There was a video game back before most of you were born called The Legend of Zelda. Yeah, the original Nintendo video game, right? So I used to subscribe to a magazine called Nintendo Power, long out of print, but those of you who are 90s kids probably remember it. And they celebrated like I don't know, maybe the 10-year anniversary of the Nintendo Entertainment System. And I remember this still sticks in my mind, even though I haven't read it in ages and haven't thought about it in ages. And they were like, what's the greatest advice ever dished out in a video game? And it was some random character in The Legend of Zelda who said, talk to everybody. And I was like, that's kind of it, isn't it? Like the way we grow and the way we become better storytellers and the way that we further our career and the way that we become, frankly, interesting people is talking to everybody. Now, eventually you'll realize that some people just aren't worth talking to anymore, but it helps to talk to them long enough to find out that you shouldn't. Because if you close yourself off and don't have conversations and don't ask and don't explore and don't travel, your life will not amount to too much. That was negative. Let me go out on a more optimistic note. If you travel, if you ask, if you talk, if you converse, if you have open dialogue, if you meet people, you will have a life that is interesting far beyond your wildest expectations. That's all I got.